Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Hitting the Bar, the football podcast. I'm Chris Karle.
And I'm Geoff Saunders.
Well, Geoff, we are nearly there. Football about to start next week in England.
In England, yeah.
Yeah, it has started, of course, in Germany, and it is stopped in France and Scotland.
But, well, no, it's just moved to the courts, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, in France it kind of has. They're deciding whether or not to relegate a team or whether to allow them to stay up and bring up another two teams.
Yeah, and I mean, the common sense decision is just don't relegate and bring up the two teams, and nobody will play any more games than last season because they've stopped their Premier League from playing in the French League Cup.
They'll have a 22-team league, and then they'll sort of gradually ease back into 20, I suppose.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That means Paris Saint-Germain are champions, and Amiens stay up and get another chance to fight next season.
Yeah, and Amiens should stay up because they've always been much, much better in the last 10 games of the season than the rest of it. So they will have been penalised by some formula of points per matches or whatever, which is nonsense.
Well, the Scottish League, the Scottish Premier League, has finished on the points per match basis, and Hearts have been relegated. Rangers are champions, whatever.
No, Rangers are not champions. Celtic are
champions.
Difference
huge difference. Sorry, Rangers are outraged and Celtic are champions. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, well, Rangers are always outraged.
Yes, they are. So. Yes, yeah, and outrageous. However, we were having a quick look at how many games Hearts had left to save their season, because it seems a bit rough on them, a bit unfair.
Very much so, yeah.
But then the whole structure of how they play games in Scotland is bizarre in the extreme.
Yes, it's the welcome to the Monty Python way of running a league.
It is just absolutely surreal. It seems somehow you play 3 games against all the clubs. There are 12 clubs. You play 1 home, 1 away, and then either at home or away, depending on what you did last season.
Or whether there was a week in the month, yeah.
Yeah. And then, after 30 games, they split the 12 teams into the top 6 and the bottom 6, and they play amongst themselves. And depending on how you played away or home against that other team, the third time, you then reverse it.
Yeah, so if you'd had 2 matches at home, so Dundee against Aberdeen, Dundee had 2 matches at home and 1 away against Aberdeen, and they were in the same top 6 or bottom 6, then that match would be played in Aberdeen. And
yes, the other way around.
Yeah.
But apparently the Scottish FA predict who will finish in the top half and the bottom half in order to make that work out, but that isn't actually guaranteed. So it's a very strange system, and Hearts have been badly done to in many ways. Still had 8 games to go.
Still had 8 games to go, yeah. Which is a third of their season.
Yes, it is. Yeah, 8 out of 38. Yeah. It does seem a little bit harsh on them. Maybe they should have, I think, probably done the same as the French league and just said, okay, so Celtic, you are champions.
You're champions, yeah.
And Hearts, you can stay up, and whoever else comes up.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they bring 2 teams, I don't know how many do get promoted. Probably depends which month it is, doesn't it?
Again.
But, with 12 teams there, having an extra team isn't going to do them any damage, is it? Let's be honest.
I mean, the Scottish football's damaged enough already. I don't think you can do any more.
Well, I can't imagine being in the meeting where they said, "Okay, guys, we've got to work out how we're going to organise this league," and somebody comes up with, "Well, we'll play 3 games."
Yeah. What? Right. Yeah. We've each got a stadium, home and away. So obviously that means we'll play 3 games against.
We'll play 3 games. I mean, where did they come up with that?
I don't know where they got that from. Too much beer on that day or something, or.
Well, I don't know, but it does remind me of how John Cleese described Monty Python humour once, and he said, imagine you have a desire to go from point A to point B, but at every point on the way where you have to make a decision, do I go left, right, straight on, you make the decision completely independently of where you want to end up. And that's how Monty Python ended up in these really weird places with their things. And the Scottish Football Association, or whoever runs their Scottish Premier League, have done that. I'm quite sure every single decision was perfectly sensible in and of itself.
Yes.
But you add it all together and you go, what?
Yeah, really, it is very, very strange. I mean, I thought they played 2 at home and 2 away, but that would be far too sensible.
That would be much too sensible to do that. Yeah. But then you'd have 44 matches in the league, which would be arguably too many.
Well, true. Yeah.
Although down in what used to be the 3rd and 4th division, don't they play 48, don't they? Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, in order to be a Scottish football fan, when you're planning, when you're going to go and see your team, you kind of need a degree in mathematics to work out where are we going today, John? I think we're away, depending on if it's raining or not.
Yeah, I've got an app for that. I can.
Yeah, so it all depends whether they predict the season correctly or not, and then you play home or away. But sadly for Hearts, they have gone down. Celtic are champions. They can actually predict that, can't they, at the beginning of the season? Celtic Rangers. It's been Celtic now in a row for, 9 times?
9 times, I think.
9, yeah.
Maybe 10. Is it 10?
I think, yeah. Who cares? Moving on. You were saying last week about this sensational footballer in Germany, Timo Werner.
Yeah.
That is going on, isn't it? There's still a lot of talk about where is he actually going to Liverpool.
Well, what seems very clear is that Klopp wants him. Timo Werner wants to go to Liverpool, but Liverpool haven't made an offer. And Chelsea apparently are willing to meet the price, although they haven't made an offer either. And I think the buyout... The period for the buyout clause ends this week, so it'll be very interesting. And maybe Chelsea and Liverpool are playing this brinkmanship. Let's wait till the buyout clause period is over. And normally you would expect the price to then go up, but maybe because of what's been happening last 3 months, maybe the price goes down.
Well, this is another thing. The whole pricing structure will probably, as we said on last week's show, change. But nevertheless, that's a dangerous game to play.
Well, it's a dangerous game to play unless you desperately want and need the player. And I don't think either Chelsea or Liverpool desperately need a Timo Werner. I think the team he'd have the biggest impact at would be Chelsea, because where would he fit in at Liverpool?
Well, that's it. I mean, this is what some people are saying. Simon Jordan, as I told you before the show, was saying on TalkSport this week that it might not be the money, it just might be that he doesn't fit in because they've got Mane, they've got Firmino, they've got Salah, and maybe Werner would think, well, have a look at that and think, when am I going to play?
Well, I think Werner is a confident enough lad that he'd back himself to get into the first team. You'd struggle to think why they'd spend 54 million on a player and not play him. Maybe the question that John Henry asked Klopp was, okay, if we spend 54 million on this player, can you be sure the results next year will be 54 million better?
And they're already going to win the league, so how much better can you do?
Yeah.
What do you? I mean, you'd think the owners, the people spending the money, go, listen, if you've won the league this season with these players, what do you need to improve here?
Well, yeah, but you can't just look at the position of where they are now. Where they are now is part of a journey, and what direction are they going in? Each of those players, and Liverpool's great strength when they won the league, every year, and they were a brilliant club, was they would move out these players who everyone thought was best. He's best in the country at that. But they'd say, okay, but next year he's not going to be. He moves out, and then they bring someone else in. Keegan goes out, in comes Dalglish.
Yes,
that doesn't look a stupid decision now, does it?
Man United did that during their pomp a little bit as well. Moved out a key player here and there.
Yeah, that tended to be with people falling out with Lord Fergie.
Yes, true enough. I suppose it is a development process, and one player who is leaving is Lallana.
Indeed, that surprised me because I just caught the headline that he's signed an extension to his contract.
Yeah, until the end of June.
I didn't read the article.
Yeah, he was due to leave at the end of the season, which we should have had by now, of course, but was rudely interrupted. So they have extended it so he can actually finish the season with Liverpool and therefore get his winner's medal, all that kind of thing. But Lallana on a free at the age of 32, not bad.
Yeah, I mean, somebody will pick him up and he'll be a good player for any number of teams, I would think. I mean, he's not going to be a top 4 team. But,
no, certainly not. No.
But he'll be playing Europa, big Vase football, won't he?
Yeah, I mean, he could fit in. I mean, I don't know if they'd need him, but he'd certainly get into Wolves or Sheffield United, possibly, or Manchester United or Arsenal. Those teams.
Those sorts of teams. He certainly improved the Arsenal, wouldn't he?
Well, he was. You and I would do that.
Well, this is true. But they had their chance. I'm not going back there again. But you're talking about extending the contract. The Premier League said to every team that players that they got on loan, and the loans were actually all legally finishing at the end of June. So the Premier League said you can automatically extend them to the end of July. We'll just treat it as being the existing loan. And that,
makes sense.
That's fair enough. That's sensible. Apart from one team, and that team is predictably Manchester United.
Your favourite second team?
Oh, I think it's everybody's favourite second team, aren't they? Yeah, Sheffield United have done brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly. Everyone thought they'd be relegated. Now they're pushing for Champions League football next year.
It's unbelievable, yeah. Fantastic.
One of their best players, of course, is goalkeeper Dean Henderson, who is on loan from Manchester United. Sheffield United are 2 points behind Manchester United with a game in hand. And Henderson's loan ends end of June. So Manchester United might not want Sheffield United to be at their full strength for the last month of the season, since they'll be competing for a Champions League place with them. So they're not so far extending Henderson's loan.
Yeah, I think it's kind of bad, but if that was my team, if it was Tottenham and they were competing with Arsenal for a Champions League spot or a Europa League spot, and we had a player on loan there, I would applaud and if Tottenham did the same, because you want to get any advantage you can within the regulations. It does seem a little bit churlish, but there you are.
It's not churlish, it's just immoral. Well, no, I'm sorry, but it is. The loan deal was for this season. This season hasn't ended. They're reneging on an agreement they made.
Yeah, it's not a calendar thing.
To get an advantage over a team that's an immediate competitor of theirs. So remember, Manchester United, you're scared of Sheffield United. Let's just make this very clear.
Yeah. I think that's definitely the takeaway here, is that Manchester United are now competing with Wolves and even more so favourites to go down, Sheffield United.
Yeah.
Are Manchester United. There's only one team called United, Sheffield. But Man United are now competing with the likes of Sheffield United.
Yeah, indeed.
But having said that, I'm a Tottenham fan, and who are we competing for? You know, we're sort of hovering around 8th, 9th. We've got Manchester United is our first game next Friday. That's a tough one. Tottenham's running not as difficult as some. We've got West Ham amongst that mix. Got players coming back from injury, but I still worry. That top four is a bit of a dream now.
Yeah, but you do have an easy run in. I mean, there aren't many teams with an easier run in. You've got Manchester United at home, then you've got West Ham at home, so that'll be a draw.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it always is, isn't it?
Yes.
Sheffield United away, that'll be a difficult match, mind you. Everton at home, there's 3 points for you. Bournemouth away, to do well there. You've got the Arse at home.
Ooh, yeah. North London derby,
you got Jongleurs away.
That's Newcastle, for those that don't know.
Leicester at home and Palace away. And of those, I would predict that Palace might be the hardest match.
That's interesting, because I think all of those are... You say that's an easy run-in. There are no easy games, but Palace not looking to go down. They might be on the beach, as they used to say, by then.
Yeah, you would hope so. Leicester, very, 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 very good team. Jongleurs, if they're safe, they'll be on holiday.
Well, you say that. A few seasons ago, not that long ago, Tottenham, of course we all know, famously came third in a 2-horse race to win the league. Leicester won the league. There was an awful game at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea, nowhere near the top four. Their season was over, but of course Tottenham and Chelsea have a bitter rivalry, and it was a very, very vicious, nasty game. Tottenham needed to win, I think. We came away with a draw. Season over with 2 or 3 games to go. Our last game was away at Newcastle, who had been relegated. They were already relegated, nothing to play for. They put 5 past top 4 Tottenham, who were tipped to win the league that season, and they went away to Newcastle, still, fighting for a Champions League spot. Relegated Newcastle, put 5 past Tottenham. So you say we've got an easy run in. We can do what we like to call Spursy, which is mess things up, basically.
Well, yeah. The flip side of the coin about the easy run in is that you've actually played all your, completed your home and away fixtures against all the difficult teams already. True. So your points are lower than they would otherwise have been.
That is a good point.
So you probably, if everything was equal, you'd be a couple of points higher in the league than you are now.
That's comforting to know. You've got Arsenal there, who they're 8th, 9th alongside us.
Yeah.
And then you've got Leicester, of course, who second, third in the league all season. So those are 2 tough games. But yes, Newcastle, Palace, West Ham are teams that possibly by then will have nothing to play for.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be playing relegation-threatened teams when the result matters at the end of the season, do you? That's,
no.
That's just common sense. The Arse are quite good, aren't they? The Arsenal, sorry.
No, I meant the quite good bit. That's what threw me.
Well, yeah, they had good but not great results, didn't they? They drew a lot of matches before the break. I mean, they must get European football of some some description, mustn't they?
Yeah.
This season.
Slightly. I mean, we've been saying it for a while. We hadn't seen any improvement under Mikel Arteta, the groundsman, as we like to call him. But actually, there has been, before the season was brought to a halt, there was a reasonable improvement under him. But if they finish outside the Europa League spots, will he be given another year to develop?
I think he will. I mean, they've averaged 1.4 points per game, and they've got to get better than that to get into the Europa League positions. But their matches to come include City, Leicester, and Spurs.
Yeah, Tottenham, yeah.
So improving on that 1.4 points per game is going to be hard.
It is going to be hard. I fear, I mean, happy for Arsenal to finish outside the top 7, but it could be both Arsenal and Tottenham.
Yes, it could, and might well. And in case anybody thinks, oh, well, if Arsenal have something to play for, then they'll be better. Just remember their feeble exit from the Vase this season against Olympiacos. The might of Olympiacos.
The might of Olympiacos, yes, indeed.
I mean, they're a decent team, Olympiacos. Not disparaging them, but they are not in the elite in European football.
Yeah. No.
They're not where the Arsenal think
they are, yeah, but they're not. Yes, if it wasn't for these pesky newcomers like Sheffield United and Leicester and Wolves, Tottenham and Arsenal might be a little bit higher, but, times have changed. Before we move on, your trivia question.
Oh, right, yeah, my trivia question about an FA Cup winning team. Since the start of the Football League, only one team has won the FA Cup that were not in the Football League. Which team?
All right, I think I know this one, but we shall wait till the end of the show to find out. Intriguing as always. That's Geoff's trivia question for today. A quick shout out to Global Radio, 93.6 Global Radio. Geoff and I are on a football show every Saturday afternoon for Global Radio, all about football live, and you can catch that between 3 p.m. and 6:30 Central European Time every Saturday on 93.6 Global Radio on the Costa del Sol and www.global.fm worldwide. Looking forward to doing that again, Geoff.
Yeah, it'll be good. Be good to be back.
It will, yeah. But we're back with this podcast. Lots of stuff to talk about. But yes, so Timo Werner, we don't know where he's going. Could be Chelsea, could be Liverpool.
Could be Liverpool, yeah. Klopp came out with an interesting comment. Well, it was printed during the week. I don't know exactly when he said it, but he said, quoting here, discussing with the players about things like salary waivers, and then on the other hand, buying a player for £50 million. We have to explain, and it's quite right. And maybe that's behind it.
Well, that is a good point, because, first of all, it's just about clear that they're going to win the league.
Yes.
These are highly paid players. They unfairly, as we've said on this podcast before, not just Liverpool, but all professional players, unfairly singled out, take a pay cut, and now, you're asking players again, people are talking about a pay cap, and then you're spending, as he says, all that money. You've got to explain it to the likes of Mo Salah, who's probably won the league for you, and who wants a contract extension and bigger pay. You kind of got to explain all of that, haven't you? So he's right. I think.
It's not just about extensions and bigger pay, but, the players have lost money. They've lost money during the lockdown. So, they are perfectly entitled to turn around and say, well, hang on, boss, 50 million or so, Now, I'm not quite sure how many would, because most footballers want to win. And so if they see someone coming in that can help them win more matches, most of them will be very happy. The one who won't be very happy is the one whose position he's going to take.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that if you feel threatened, you think, well, am I going to pass the ball to him and he scores the goal that wins us the Champions League, or will I be not on the pitch because of him coming here and therefore losing money? So, I mean, it's kind of a complicated process, I suppose, footballers have to go through to get to whether they like it or not. Infantino, the FIFA guy, president, has suggested that players should take a pay cap. There should be pay capping across the leagues. You're a business person. I mean, how does business ethic-wise, how does that go? Somebody dictating that or wanting to dictate that? Because each individual club is a business on its own.
They are limited companies, yes. Limited by shares. They are owned by people, yes. So, when Mrs. Thatcher, in her infinite wisdom, allowed that to happen, then the FAs, the football associations, lost all the power. So they can't now impose things like that. The only way it can happen is if all the clubs in Europe Europe, because it would have to be Europe-wide, get together and say, yes, this is a voluntary thing. It could then be challenged by the professional football associations, the players' unions in every country, and you remember how many court cases there were over the Bosman case, which sort of gave, freedom of movement to players. It's not going to be easy. You are dealing with limited companies that are limited by the law of the country they're in, nothing to do with football authorities. So if all the clubs agree, then it can happen. I'm not convinced that it will happen at the top of the game. I think there is a very good common sense argument for it happening at the bottom of the game, what used to be the third and the fourth division, where clearly there is, they're living beyond their means. This might be something they can do to even things out. If this existed, then Bury would still be in business. Bury would still be playing football, because they couldn't take on these players and pay them way more than anyone else in their division and win promotion, etc., etc.
In what is now called League Two, the final division as far as fully professional goes. Yeah, so they were overpaying their players. Now, we were talking there about the French League and how they've stopped playing and the Scottish League have stopped playing and just decided on point system. They've done that the same in League One and League Two, the old third and fourth divisions, as you like to call them. That means that currently Stevenage have been relegated out of the Football League, but it could be Macclesfield.
It could be Macclesfield, yeah.
Depending on what happens with their latest case against them, because they didn't pay the wages.
Didn't pay the wages in March, and given that the charge has already happened, because it's a question of fact, they didn't, it's very difficult to see how they can win any court case against the Football League for that.
Stevenage will be delighted if it goes against Macclesfield, but also possibly feel, in a way, vindicated, because, Macclesfield have been getting away with not playing players that possibly they couldn't have afforded and maybe have been better than they deserved.
Well, exactly.
And so Stevenage would have felt they were at some sort of unfair disadvantage, I suppose.
Yeah, and you do have to keep in mind that the Football League is not an independent body, on high looking at things for the benefit of everyone. Yeah. The Football League is the owners of those football clubs. So everyone has a vested interest in the decision.
Yeah, so they're all looking out for themselves.
Of course they are, yeah.
Firstly, and what is fair, thirdly, probably. But to be fair, Stevenage would claim that Macclesfield had an unfair advantage by having those players. But those players were paid, weren't they, you mentioned, by the Supporters Association?
Yeah, the 20% of the salary that the club should still have been paying under lockdown was paid by the Supporters Trust at Macclesfield, yeah. They're called the Silkman's Trust. So
that's it, yeah.
Let's give them a shout-out because they're great people.
Yes, absolutely. We will definitely do that. The Silkman Trust, well done to you. But that might not save Macclesfield from investigation and then being found guilty.
Well, that's right. They've been deducted 11 points so far. And there were 3 points from the last thing they did wrong that was suspended. So even being charged now must mean those 3 points come in, so they go below Stevenage. If there's another points deduction, well, they're done for, aren't they?
Yes, that would be them finished, obviously.
Yes, probably completely finished, actually.
Yeah, along with Bury, as you say. Yeah. Unless some rich owner comes along, which is unlikely because, you've got rich owners after Newcastle and clubs like that instead.
Yes, yeah, well, let's not get there. I mean, that's just the most depressing thing. And actually, the most depressing thing is seeing the result, what's being posted online forums by Newcastle fans. All they can say is, we're going to get lots and lots of money, and this is the people who are buying the club are the people who killed Khashoggi. And this regime is just awful. Absolutely awful regime.
If it had been, which is very unlikely, but if it had been the North Korean leader who was buying Newcastle, people would be up in arms. But as we do actually deal arms to Saudi Arabia, there's some sort of legitimisation gone on there, I suppose.
Well, actually, putting Kim in charge of jongleurs might be...
that would be quite amusing.
The ultimate joke.
Yes, actually, that'd be quite funny. That would be quite good.
Yeah, because they'd break away, they'd form their own league.
Yeah. Any news coming out of the stadium would be that they'd won every game.
Yeah, indeed.
Indeed, yeah, brilliant.
No, we shouldn't laugh. It's actually a very serious thing.
It is,
and the worst, well, not the worst part, but one of the really bad parts about this is that the only risk to this, the only thing that can stop this going ahead is the fact that the Be Out TV channel, which is owned and sponsored by Saudi Arabia, has been nicking money from TV money from the Premier League.
Right.
So they don't care about a regime that murders its own people, but you steal our money.
Yes, yeah. Suddenly you're not fit and proper.
Yeah.
So we shall see, but there has been lately this week talk of other bids coming in for Newcastle, so maybe it'll go another way. You and I certainly hope so, because as has been said before, there is this fit and proper thing, supposedly. A regime with blood on their hands in such a blatant way, I don't think should be managing a club that... Football is a very, very public affair, so you're providing platforms where or legitimisation where perhaps you shouldn't.
That legitimisation is the purpose of the thing. It is sports washing, and they make no bones about it. So but we are back to where we were. It's a limited company. One man owns the shares. He can sell them to whoever he wants. All
right, let's move on to sort of more light-hearted stuff, though, Geoff, and let's hope that Saudi Arabia do not become part of our Saturday afternoon viewing.
Yeah.
You mentioned last week, you spoke about the Danish club who had a Zoom meeting with thousands of their fans with screens in the stands and making a lot of atmosphere.
This was Aarhus against Randers, yes.
Thank you, Aarhus. Again, somebody who needs a good shout-out. That was a brilliant idea. You've noticed something, talking about fans in the stadium, because obviously you can't have them now. You've noticed a new sort of tendency, or lack of tendency, in the German league with empty stadiums.
Yeah. Two things have happened. There are better results for the away team, noticeably better away results than there were before, which ties into the research that universities have done to say, yes, decisions do go to home teams. I mean, it's a fact, they do.
Yeah, well,
the crowd affects the referee. So without the crowd, that's not happening, and there are much, much better away results than before. That's happening. The second thing, which is quite brilliant, is there's much, much less diving and acting. Because if there's no audience, there's no point in acting.
There's nobody to dive in front of or to act, yeah.
And it's a very noticeable thing.
The whole it's all drama, but when they dive and roll about, clutching their knee and demanding a penalty, the whole thing is sort of kind of covered or enhanced by a soundtrack.
That's right.
That soundtrack being the fans. But when it echoed him going ouch and screaming for a penalty, echoing around an empty stadium and nobody agreeing with him, he actually looks at it's like without CGI or without a soundtrack, it just looks like an actor in an empty space. So it's not nearly as believable.
No, that's right. I mean, during a lockdown, I've watched a lot of the TV series of The Saint with Roger Moore, and the thing which is hilarious is the
cars. I know.
And the film of Roger Moore supposedly driving a car, and you can see it's quite obviously sat in the studio. It just never looks right.
You can just see they've got the background, and it's obviously he's not driving around Monte Carlo at all. He's in Pinewood with somebody holding a cardboard cutout.
Yeah, he's in Elstree, actually, not Pinewood.
Elstree, thank you very much. But talking of cardboard cutouts, Brighton have decided not quite as high-tech as the Danish team.
Aarhus.
Thank you. Not quite as high-tech as them. Brighton are going to say for their remaining home games at the Amex Stadium, how romantically named, the Amex American Excess, they've decided to have cardboard cutouts of fans who wish to have their faces plastered on cardboard cutouts and put around the stands for £20 a pop.
For £20 a pop?
You send them your photograph and they blow it up, cut it out and put it on a cardboard cutout.
How very high-tech that is.
That is, but you still...
Compared to Aarhus, with 10,000 Zoom screens. Yes.
Yeah, so you don't get to see the game, and you just happen to have your picture in the ground at the time.
If you pay £20. And what about season ticket holders?
I know. I don't know how that works. It does seem to me a little bit cynical, and also not a great help to the fans, really. I mean, it's just that's a vanity thing, I suppose.
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe there's some sort of motivation as, it's a community thing, let's all, I don't know, but it seems to me to be very mean. You have to pay 20 quid to do it. I mean,
I mean, you shouldn't have to pay 20 quid to go and see Brighton anyway. Let alone just have your picture there.
Well, they've exceeded expectations this year, haven't they? So
actually, yes, in fair credit.
They're 15th, 2 points ahead of West Ham, so they're almost certainly going to stay up.
Some people said that Brighton may go down. Looks like they are just about out safe.
Well, I don't know. Hang on a second. Let's just look at the matches they've got. They've got the Arse, Leicester, Man United, Liverpool and City.
Ouch.
As 5 of their 9 games.
Yeah.
So they can realistically get points from the other, maybe 1 point against the Arsenal. And then they need points from Norwich away, Southampton away. That might be quite easy. Southampton are safe. Newcastle at home. Newcastle will be on holiday. 3 or 4 points there. And then Burnley away.
Burnley.
Actually, Brighton look to be in trouble, actually, based on those games.
Having said that, maybe those that predicted Brighton to go down still could be right. It's still very mixed up there at the bottom of the table.
Oh, it's very close. And the golden rule is always if you got the same number of points as games played or fewer points than games played, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So anyone from Brighton downwards is... Yeah, they're 29. So from then down, how many is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 teams.
Yeah, 3 to go down, and there's 6 who could fill those spots. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming Southampton have done enough. They're 5 points clear of Brighton, so Southampton have done enough already. Well, Norwich are down, aren't they? Let's be honest.
Yeah, Villa quite possibly.
But Bournemouth.
That third spot. That third spot could be any old Bournemouth, Brighton.
Well, I think the third spot will be a toss-up between Bournemouth and Brighton, yeah.
So you're saying your team, West Ham, are safe? Will be.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I think our run-in is easier than nearly everyone else down there. You know, we got a guaranteed 3 points from the away match at Tottenham. So
oh, really? My God.
That's going to help, obviously.
Listen, nobody's played football for 100 days, and yet West Ham still lost 2 games during lockdown. That's how bad they are.
They lost 2 games that they were 3-0 up with 5 minutes to play. Yeah, I mean, West Ham's games are Wolves at home. That's a tough game. Spurs away. It's nearly always a draw. Chelsea at home. That's often a draw too.
That's the best you'll get out of that, I think. Although you did beat them at Stamford Bridge earlier in the season.
Yes, exactly. Jongleurs away. Toss a coin.
Anything.
Who the hell knows? Burnley at home. That'll be a tough game. Burnley are a tough team. Norwich away. Norwich will need to win that to stay up, so it'll be a hard game. But West Ham are better than Norwich. Watford at home. Watford will be on holiday.
Watford are another team that could still go down.
They're down there, yeah. Manchester United away and Aston Villa at home. So there's some 3-pointers down there, actually.
Yes, I think it's going to be a very exciting end to the season. Resumption of and end of a season. Last 8 games, especially in that bottom 6. And all the games available to be watched one way or another on all the different providers, including the BBC who've got a few games.
Yeah, well, that's good.
And it is predicted they probably get their biggest ever audience of a sporting event ever, which quite obviously, if you haven't got Sky or BeIN or your local pub hasn't or whatever, to be able to watch on, and much, I think the BBC do, they do a lot of things very badly lately, reporting-wise.
The Brexit Broadcasting Corporation.
The Brexit, yeah. I mean, they've become... I don't get my news from there anymore, but I would very much enjoy watching... I do very much enjoy watching football on the BBC. They do it best. I think they do it best.
They are the people... They are the channel that people want to watch big sport events on. If it's them and it's also on satellite, people watch it on BBC. Yeah, and we are contractually obliged to say that other TV channels are available.
Yes. So football starting next week, we will be predicting the next round of games, Geoff and I, on Hitting the Bar. But before we finish off, your question and the answer.
Since the Football League started, only one club from outside the league has won the FA Cup. Who are they? And Chris, you can tell me.
I can. It is the wonderful, one and only Tottenham Hotspur.
In 1901, which is the last time they were wonderful. Yes.
Yeah. No, we did win a trophy back in 2008. That was the last time we won anything, can you believe? But that was 1901, so explain why.
Well, because back then there were two leagues which competed with each other. There was the Southern League and the Football League. And after that they merged to be called the Football League.
Right, so we were non-Football League
you
at the time.
A Southern League team, yes.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well done, Tottenham Hotspur. Well done, Geoff, for that. That's all we've got time for. We'll be back next week. I'm Chris Karle.
And I'm Geoff Saunders.
And that was Hitting the Bar, the football podcast.